I really wanted to spend some time seeing Lake Powell on the Colorado River and Monument Valley, so a few weeks ago I picked up my high school girlfriend at the airport in Vegas. She had never been before, so the first thing we did was take a drive down the Strip to Fremont Street. I love to hang out on Fremont Street. It's a crazy place filled with free entertainment. Some people think it's crazy to take your kids there, but I actually found it because of my kid. It used to have the best prime rib in Vegas. Yuck, I hate prime rib, but boy, I sure had a fun time at the overhead light show. It sure has gotten a lot trashier over the years, but hey, this is Vegas. And what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, except for this little jewel. It was an act I hadn't seen before, and I'm through there pretty often for work. People were tipping this lovely lady to be whipped with her whip. I found that hilarious, as this one man paid her several times. She finally held up her hand and told him that's enough. I had to get my photo taken with her, so I got out a few bucks and walked up and told her I didn't want to be whipped, just wanted a photo. She was a good sport, but as I turned around and walked away, she whipped me. Touché. That's funny. We finally made it out of Vegas alive and drove northeast through St. George towards Page, Arizona, which sits on the edge of Lake Powell on the Colorado River. I have an annual federal park pass that I paid $80 for, and I love getting my use out of it, so we drove through Zion National Park. This was my second time driving through it, and we grabbed a quick sub sandwich and enjoyed a nice lunch in the park. There's a lot of places to pull off, but nowhere to pull off when we came upon these big beauties sitting in the rocks enjoying the afternoon sunshine. They are desert bighorn sheep and a little lamb. Bighorns were locally extinct by the mid-1900s, and in 1978 they reintroduced 14 sheep back into the Zion wilderness. At first it did not appear successful, but in 2015 there were over 400 animals there. I studied a bit about how to tell the age of a bighorn sheep on how to calculate it based on the rings on their horns. I came up with the buck being about 6 years old. Any experts out there want to chime in? The lamb sure was cute. We spent about an hour and a half driving a couple miles through the park and didn't make it too much farther down the road when we spotted Coral Pink Sand Dune State Park. We were about 2 hours out of Page with absolutely no plans other than having to find somewhere to stay that night. It was quite a ways off the highway, but wow, what a pretty cool little spot to see if you have the time. Before we hit the entrance to the park, we stopped and hiked up to the top of a hill overlooking the dunes, and wow, was it pretty up there. A man and his 2 kids were in the distance playing, and a few people were out in their ATVs. We enjoyed the warm sand under our toes. We drove the rest of the short ways to the entrance and around the park. It's not much different than the first place we stopped, although this is a ramp that you can walk out onto and it's easy access, as opposed to hiking to the top of the hill. But that was half the fun. I did indeed enjoy the park and happily paid the entrance fee to the Utah State Parks. No freebies there for me. And then it happened. Carlin saw the Grand Canyon for her very first time. And on the opposite side of the street is the Glen Canyon Dam, which holds back all that massive amount of water that's in Lake Powell. We stopped at Big John's Texas Barbecue for dinner that night. It's outside seating with a band playing, lots of crowd participation, and it always looks fun. We quickly received some awesome pulled pork and ribs, and the people sitting at the table beside us went on and on about their visit to Antelope Canyon that day. I loved the tops of the barbecue pit, how cute. In the morning, we headed a few miles east of Page to Antelope Canyon. It's a quick Jeep drive to Upper Canyon, and a guide took us through the narrow passageway, which was created by the water flowing through the rocks. During certain times of the year, the sun's beams come down through the openings in the top of the canyon, radiating down to the floor. Towards the beginning, our guide told us to stick close to him so we could make it back to a certain spot by a certain time. Him and the guide behind us exchanged a few words while we were going through about whether or not we were holding up the line purposely, as there's lots of people on the tour. We were almost back to the beginning when he told us to stop right where we were. And then for a brief moment, a beam came down through the opening above, lighting up the floor in front of us. I have photographed a lot of things in my life, but I've never felt that kind of energy behind my lens. Wow, it was like God was dancing in front of me. It was like flames were moving in the sand. The sand was swirling in the beam's light, making it look like it was moving inside of it. Wow! 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 As we headed back in the Jeep, my fancy hat flew off that I'd just got in Vegas. I decided that was money well spent. We then headed a few miles south of Page to see Horseshoe Bend on the Colorado River. It's about a 1.25 mile walk round trip up a sandy hill and down to the canyon's edge. I've been here a few times now, and let's just say I have no reason to ever go stand at the edge again. Wow, there's absolutely no rails and it's straight down, so I sat a few feet away while my brave girlfriend snapped some photos. On the way back to Page, we took a little dirt road down towards the rim for a few more photos of the P in the pretty rock, and sat and visited with the turkey vulture for a bit. Wow, that was an interesting bird. We then headed to Lone Rock to watch the sunset over Lake Powell. I've camped a few times at Lone Rock, and I loved the energy from this massive rock. This is part of the Glen Canyon National Recreation Area, so my park pass got us into free here as well. I've always enjoyed camping here and have spent a few weekends over the last couple years, and it was a real treat to sit and watch the beautiful sunset with my beautiful girlfriend. Oh, what a treat. Later that night, we checked into this really cute hotel called the Red Rock Motel for a beautiful night's sleep. My daughter Amber joined us that night, and we woke very early the next morning to catch a boat up to Lake Powell to Rainbow Bridge National Monument. This is the world's largest natural bridge. I enjoyed sitting on the top deck. Make sure you get in line early if you want to sit up top. And it was a fabulous 3-hour boat ride to the monument. Our guide Ursula told us that if we drank the special Navajo lemonade, that we just might start seeing things in the rocks. Sure enough, guess what we saw? A heart. And it turned out to be Heart Rock Cave. And yes, there was others that we could see as well. I like lemonade. And I loved the wind blowing our beautiful American flag above us. How beautiful she is. The last leg of it is a narrow passageway up to the monument before you're handed to the Park Service, which then takes you on another boat a short ways to the edge. It's then a quick walk to the bridge. And once you get there, wow, is she stunning. To think that that's made from water rushing through it in the middle of the desert. There was a flute player from a Navajo tribe sitting below the rim, playing some beautiful music. The boat captain had told us what great fishing it was up here, and sure enough, Amber spotted a giant. On the boat ride back, I enjoyed the hot sun on my face as I fell asleep from the cool wind. Note to self, wear chapstick with SPF next time so you don't feel like Mick Jagger for the next week with swollen, burnt lips. But oh, it was so worth it. From there, we drove 2 hours east to Monument Valley National Monument, a beautiful valley on the Utah-Arizona border with sandstone mesas and buttes that tower at heights of 400 to 1,000 feet. We stayed in a cabin at the View, which overlooks the valley. We were really hungry, but it was such an incredible sunset, changing every 10 minutes the colors, casting different shades on the mesas and buttes, that we waited to the last minute to duck into the restaurant for a delicious dinner. The next morning, we hooked up with Roger, a Navajo guide, and spent the first part of the day exploring Mystery Valley, a less-known part of Monument Valley filled with Anasazi ruins, petroglyphs, and pictographs. The latter part of the day was spent exploring Monument Valley. This is a sacred place to the Navajos, and our guide shared so much of their culture with us. This included a lunch stop for Navajo tacos, which were apparently running. It was a beautiful setting for lunch, sitting beside the cool rocks of the Big Mesa. My girlfriend had asked how the fry bread was made and ducked inside the trailer for a quick demonstration on how to make the dough. I think I just gained 5 pounds thinking about one. And then as we left, one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken, a crow sitting in a burnt tree, or at least it looked burnt, and I thought it was cool that the white image of the bird came out. The highlight of my day was when Roger drew a cocopelli with sand on a rock in front of one of the ruins. He had been joking with us that if we listened, we could hear his flute calling us to him. Apparently, he calls all the ladies, sort of a Casanova. He was said to travel to villages, bringing the change of winter to spring, carrying a sack of seeds and song on his back. He is the source of human conception, and everyone would sing and dance when they heard the cocopelli play his flute. In the morning, every maiden in the village would be with children. Roger sat and put his hands on the rock before he started to draw, and beckoned me to sit beside him. I sat quietly and watched, so mesmerized by how quickly the image came to life. When we were done, I said, "We should say a prayer or something." It was so spiritual to see what the man had drawn so quickly. And before we left, Roger walked over to the rock and said a quick prayer, then used a stick to erase the image. I asked him what he had said in his native tongue, and it was something along the lines of, "I did not have the right to draw on this rock, and I have erased it to show respect." Wow, I so have such respect for Roger. What a blessing. When we came upon this cliff dwelling, Roger invited all of us to hike up to it, but I'm a little afraid of heights and decided to stay below and take pictures. My brave girlfriend did it, though. My favorite part was watching Roger run down those rocks. What a fabulous time that was. Have I mentioned how much I love Roger? This ruin sat way up in the air, and I wondered how did they get up there. Roger then showed us some holes in the rocks below it that they used for ladders to get up there, and he shared with us some of the pottery that had been found in the area. Same pottery that was found on my property. We spent the rest of the afternoon looking at more of the mesmerizing statues. They are so beautiful, and if you really use your mind, you will see things in them, such as Standing Chief, John Wayne's boot. I can't even begin to tell you all of the names that there were. Wild horses, sand dunes to hike up to. If you look really close, you'll see that we're standing under that tree way up in those sand dunes. Whoop, whoop, even I got a hike up there. Yep, I did it. More petroglyphs in the rocks. If that isn't amazing, to think that how old those are, that people once lived in these caves. He then asked us if we would like to stop by a Hogan and watch his friend. She makes wool out of sheep hair and was making some rugs. What a treat to see that. As we left, we stopped and took a few more pictures in Kayenta, and I realized how many times I drove by the Monument Valley and never knew what I was driving by. How funny is that? Always wanted to see it. Turns out I had. It was a 4-hour drive back home, not too far, and a few nights in my own bed before I had to take her back to Vegas. She had wanted to stay in the sun, sunbathing, and walk around my property, as it too is filled with lots of native pottery. Wow, was I thrilled when I found this red piece of pottery. I had never seen this artist on my property before. It was a spiritual experience to just wrap up our whole trip. What a vacation.